Happy birthday to you, WTO. As the world's multilateral trading system celebrates its 30th anniversary, it also means a critical juncture for the rules-based system for global trade. Is the WTO still relevant? How will it reform and update? What if some of its members are reluctant to move along? We got answers from people who have been crucial in the day-to-day work of the WTO.
About the WTO is
减少不平等。
So we need to narrow the gap.
How China developed.
very significant.
Tune in to our special series, WTO at 30 on World Insight. Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Today, let's continue our special series marking the WTO's 30th anniversary. Let's meet Zhang Yuejiao. She is the first Chinese national to be appointed a member of the WTO Appellate body, serving 2 consecutive terms from 2008 to 2016. The Appellate body's job is to settle disputes among members, so it's called the teeth of the WTO. But it has been paralyzed since the year 2019 due to U.S. opposition to filling Appellate body seats. I sat down with Zhang Yuejiao in studio recently to hear her thoughts on that and more. I'm so glad to be joined in the studio by Zhang Yuejiao, the first Chinese national to be appointed as a member of the WTO Appellate body. She also serves 2 consecutive terms from 2008 to 2016 in WTO. Thank you so much, Madam Zhang, for joining us.
Thank you for your kind introduction.
Thank you. Madam Zhang, you served 2 terms in WTO.
Yes.
You also served as the chairwoman of the Appellate body. Now, 30 years anniversary of the World Trade Organization, I'm sure this moment means a lot to you. How would you say and assess the role of WTO today?
I think together with my colleagues and co-workers, we're all happy with this moment because it's very significant for international trade and for international rule of law and for the standard of living of people increase for the last 30 years. We saw the development closely, and even we worked in the WTO. We see that how hard people were working to achieve this great achievement. So when people they talk about the WTO, they're all very proud of the great progress made by WTO for the last 3 decades. So particularly for international trade in goods and trade in services have been developed rapidly and contribute more than 30% to the world economic development. So it's a historical moment. I'm sure that people also are looking for the next 30 years. The WTO will do even better.
But at the same time, no doubt, the WTO is facing one of the biggest times of challenges, if not crisis, at this moment. Appellate body, in which you used to work for as the dispute settlement mechanism chairwoman, now is facing a critical juncture as a result of certain members of the WTO seized its role within the WTO and refused to update the new members of the Appellate body. The AB, as you say, actually collapsed, at least paralyzed. So, Madam Zhang, what is your take on the current situation?
Yeah, we feel very bad, very sorry for the dysfunctioning of the appellate body. The dispute settlement system of the WTO is the most successful function of the WTO 3 or 4 functions. together with multilateral negotiations, trade policy review, and technical assistance. So dispute settlement is the rule of law in international trade. And for the enforcement of the implementation of the WTO obligations, rights, and the WTO covered agreement to support the rule-based multilateral trading system is critical. And the appellate body is one tier of the two tiers altogether, the system. It's a fair balance of rights and obligations and fair procedures among those parties who use the dispute settlement.
Right.
I should say that it's very successful. To my time, I think already there were 600 cases handled and solved peacefully through the means of mediation and arbitration and appeal system. And also the enforcement is very good overall. So now the WTO has 166 members. They need badly a smooth functioning dispute settlement system.
Right.
One, the appellate body is lacking. Now, up to now, there are about 40 cases pending because when the parties appeal, the legal issues arise from the panel report. They are waiting for a fair appellate body solution. So I think to quickly resume the appeal system is needed. Is to also ensure the objective of the dispute settlement embodied in the DSU for prompt and positive solution of dispute.
Well, many say without the appellate body, without the dispute settlement mechanism of the WTO literally has lost its teeth. So without that, so far, and with the geopolitics as we all have witnessed, rise of protectionism as well in certain economies, the United States, for example, how do you see the hope of that recovery you just talked about?
Yeah, first I would like to clarify a little bit that in the dispute settlement system of the WTO, there are two tiers, panel stage and then appellate body stage as the final stage of the dispute settlement. So for the panel stage, they are still working properly. So I hope that they can continue to handle their cases positively and promptly. However, without the appeal system to correct the major legal errors, so a leg is lacking. So really, that's why there are about 40 cases pending.
Right.
So when they want to appeal, challenge the errors, to correct the errors of the panel report, but they have no way. Their rights already undermined and cut off. So that's why it's urgently needed to accelerate the reform and resume the appeal system to make the system complete and perfect.
Madam Zhang, it's already 5 years almost.
Yes.
Since the paralyzed of the arbitration system, especially the dispute settlement system. And we understand now there's something called, as you said, multi-party interim arbitration appeal arrangement. If I remember that right, so MPIA abbreviation. It's still working, which means it could be at least the very first stop for those disputes to go to. And yet, without the final decision and the executive power to execute, to implement the final decision to the member economies. So how will this function?
I think that there's a temporary arrangement because the appellate body is collapsed, no functioning anymore. So to replace temporarily the appeal system. However, only 1/3 of the members of the WTO join such arrangement. This arbitration clause is Article 25 of the WTO. It's not stipulated clearly that to have the appeal function. However, they are doing this is to take some temporary measures to cure the shortage of lacking the appellate body.
Right.
As I mentioned, that 1/3 members join, so 2/3 still outside of the system, and when they have a problem, they want to appeal the legal errors. They have no way, so their rights already undermined. And the other problem.
But on the other hand, in these days, plurilateralism has become such a new trend within the WTO as a result of difficulties of reaching consensus multilaterally. So would that be a solution, at least temporarily?
Yes, but not too long. If it's too long, first, it's unfair to the 2/3 non-members. Secondly, if it's too long, the system itself is not properly established.
Right.
For instance, the legal effect, and also the administrative arrangement, staffing issue, and others.
Right.
So I think that to have a perfect, better, and legally defined appeal system, much better. And resume the appeal system as quick as possible. It's really the whole world, professionals and members, they are waiting for this positive outcome. You know, more than 120 members, they wrote a letter to ask the resumption of the selection process of appellate body members, already more than 20 times to the DSB, but still no move. It's really a pity.
So here it comes. I know you are reluctant to name names, but may I do that job in a way? Because it has totally to do with the attitude of the United States, which is a founding member of the WTO. It has seized its role. It has refused to update the members of the dispute settlement mechanism of the arbitration appellate body. Now we are seeing an interesting reality. The world except one. As you said, more than 120 members of the WTO, a huge majority of the WTO already signed on those letters, trying to ask the WTO executive body and member states together to work on this. But still, so what does that say to you? If the U.S. continues to do so, and there is pretty much chance of that, if you look at the latest situation, then what does that mean for WTO? And will WTO just stop where the U.S. wants it to stop? That's the question.
To my knowledge, still all members, they are actively join the discussions and negotiations.
Including the U.S.?
Yes, yes. So even they have different views. Sometimes the rebuttal is very hard and difficult. But if so long they have the will to bring the system, to improve the system, and to bring the appeal system in this dispute settlement mechanism.
Right.
And the people, very smart, all members join, and they can get a good solution. I don't think that they want to give up the system, because for the last 30 years, the WTO has been working so well and highly appreciated by the world community.
Happy birthday to you, WTO. As the world's multilateral trading system celebrates its 30th anniversary, it also means a critical juncture for the rules-based system for global trade. Is the WTO still relevant? How will it reform and update? What if some of its members are reluctant to move along? We got answers from people who have been crucial in the day-to-day work of the WTO.
About the WTO is
减少不平等。
So we need to narrow the gap.
How China developed.
very significant.
Tune in to our special series, WTO at 30 on World Insight. What was it like, in fact, at that moment 5 years ago when you knew that the appellate body is facing the risk of going paralyzed, when you knew that the dispute settlement mechanism will not work as well as it used to be? What was it like for you as both a participant and now a witness of history?
Yeah, I would like to say that we felt very, very sorry and very, very bad. Not only myself, but also my colleagues from the US, from Japan, from South Africa. We have 7 members who to work together, and with also former members of the appellate body. So when we wrote to each other, we also remember the best time we sat together, and also to feel very, very bad to push the members to take a political will and decision to bring back the appeal system into the dispute settlement mechanism.
But Madam Zhang, the U.S. also has its own argument, as you know, the so-called Chevron doctrines and also related issues. Literally, they explain at the very beginning of the WTO's appellate body, they have already foreseen the possibility that there will be times that U.S. rights will be violated as a result of the ruling coming from the appellate body of the WTO. And therefore, they leave their own little courtyard, saying if there were more than one legal interpretations, they would have to resort to their own domestic laws. And now, that seems to be the case. So what do you make of their argument, and where are we now, legally speaking?
I would say it's not objective, and also it's not the fact. In fact, in all cases, in all systems for dispute settlement, the losing party is always unhappy with the result against himself. However, if we look at the decisions, so they have strong arguments, strong legal support to define the decision made. With regard to how many cases that particularly a particular member you mentioned lost, in fact, I would say that they won more cases than other countries, other members. Mainly, for instance, zeroing they mentioned for anti-dumping. That's only one measure brought by many members. So the result is many cases. In fact, if they address this particular measure, in fact, they have already done that.
But Madam Zhang, it seems that the U.S. has its own argument as to why they do not actively participate anymore in both the dispute settlement mechanism and the appellate body. They say at the very beginning of the appellate body founding, they were the members, and therefore they foresee the possibility in which their national rights might be violated by the rulings of the appellate body. And they save their little own courtyard, so to speak, by suggesting if there were more than one legal interpretations of certain cases, then they can resort to their own domestic law to deal with it. And I see that's what is going on right now, especially on anti-dumping cases. So, Madam Zhang, what do you make of their argument?
I would say that if you look at cases in all countries, in all systems, if a losing party, they lost a case, certainly they are unhappy. If they can find legal reasons, so they have means to challenge that result. But for the current case you mentioned, I don't see that they lost much more cases than others. In fact, they won more cases than others. For instance, for anti-dumping, in the case of zeroing, one measure, but it was challenged by many members, so many cases, many decisions. But in fact, only one measure. If they address this measure to keep it consistent with the WTO current agreement, so then there's no problem. In fact, they have already done this. They have addressed, I think, more than 80% of the cases claimed. So in fact, it does not exist that their rights already undermined by the WTO dispute settlement.
So that was being used as an excuse, it seems.
Yeah, if in part, at least by perception of members owned by outside people.
Now, currently, we see already controversies. For example, about electronic vehicles. As we know, there are disputes between China, United States, China, EU, China, Canada, and the list goes on. This is just one of those examples. How do you see a dispute of tariffs, for example, can be resolved without the functioning appellate body? How has it been so far, your observation?
I would say that the appellate body served as the final stage of the dispute settlement to appeal a legal error arised in the panel report. Is the second tier, is also the final stage of the dispute settlement. If parties do not have a disagreement with the panel report, then they don't need to seek the final appeal system. In the current case you mentioned, China can seek the opportunity to define their rights and the WTO agreements to against the unfair subsidy measures. However, with Europe, with Canada, it's possible if they have different views with regard to the panel report, they can seek the arbitration appeal. However, in a case that for non-members, as I mentioned, only 1/3 of the WTO members join the arbitration, temporary arbitration arrangement. And the rest, like the US, is not a member. And then, in that case, even, for instance, recently, the panel decision ruled that the US measure of 301 is inconsistent with the WTO covered agreement.
Yeah.
In that case, the U.S. does not accept the panel decision and then bring the case to the appeal system. But no appeal system exists.
Right.
Since he's not member to the temporary arrangement.
Right.
So in that case, the panel decision, the panel decision still pending, not into effectiveness.
Right.
It's really a pity for parties if they won the case, but no result, no positive result to them. Is unfair.
Now, my final question, Madam Zhang, how do you see China has been playing its role since it joined the WTO more than 20 years ago, and especially about how China has been implementing the ruling of the Appellate body?
I would say that since as a member of the Appellate body, we are independent and impartial, we don't belong to any government. No extra party communication. So we have to evaluate all members, their performance to implement the decision of the DSP adopted decision. China is doing excellent job in that field. China has implemented all decisions made by the DSP. And even, for instance, in the case of the copyright issue, China National People's Congress has modified and changed one provision, Article 4, in order to keep China's copyright law fully consistent with the WTO covered agreement.
I see.
So no country else can do this. China is really observe his international obligations and respect public international law and respect the rule of law in all fields.
Thank you so much, Madam Zhang Yuejiao, for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on X and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for being with us. And do stay tuned for our next episode of special program on WTO's 30th anniversary. Bye for now.